Yes, in 1997 and 98, my wife had cancer, and she'd been through a few cancers already. And over the period of 25 years, she had 26 surgeries. So her recovery she was always in the hospital. So she was catching all sorts of infections. And I knew that in the hospital they were using ultraviolet for disinfection with their utensils and different things. So I started looking into ultraviolet or some sort of technology that would actually clean the air in a home without sprays or chemicals. But UV would be able to really sterilize the environment that she was in, and it would keep her alive longer. So that's what I had in mind. I bent the first piece of metal, bent it all up, made a little square box out of it, riveted it together, put the optics in there and the ballasts, and got it working. And the lamps are made of quartz, and you have different quartz and different clarity of quartz. It's a lot like diamonds. And so I learned so much. And then I was able to formulate my own formula. And then I would test it, and all of a sudden I have really wonderful results. And the results got better and better until we had the recipe all figured out. This is going to work. I can smell it, I can feel it, you know. So I pushed it, and then the next box got to be a little better. Then I was able to take it down to a sheet metal place. Showed the guy basically what I wanted, and then they got nicer and more effective.
Think about the days when we didn't wash our clothes and dry them in dryers. We washed them and hung them out on lines in the sunlight and brought that laundry in, and that wonderful, fresh, crisp smell of freshly dried linens and clothes. We lose those in a dryer. When I brought my HGI hydroxyl generating unit home to try it out because I really believe in this technology, I began to feel that and sense that freshness again in the fabrics of my sofas and my drapes. And what it reminded me of was a fresh load of laundry in my house.
The discovery of the atmospheric hydroxyl occurred because of a new word that was coined into our vernacular, which was acid rain. The British were really the first to research this. Leeds University was commissioned by the British government to begin looking at it. For instance, they examined how much coal dust was going into the atmosphere and how much sulfuric acid produced as acid rain was coming down. What they found was that what was going up wasn't equating to what should be coming down. In other words, there was a huge portion of it that was absent. This is termed a chemical sink. So it was sinking into something, but what was it taking apart? They discovered that it was the action of an unknown atmosphere agent at the time called a hydroxyl, and they were quite intrigued by that. So they did chemical breakdowns for how it would break up VOCs, both natural and man-made, in the environment, but they couldn't replicate it. They did analyze it and continue to do so, and we do engage them from time to time on research matters. Where research went to next was to try to commercialize this phenomenon. At Penn State, for a number of years, Dr. Kowalski's lab tried to sequence what would be necessary to replicate what the sun does to create atmospheric hydroxyls, but they could not quite get it to where it needed to be. We were the next ones to take up the mantle and to work out how the sequencing had to be so that we could produce commercial amounts. Other organizations have hydroxyl generators, but they generate passive amounts that are not commercially viable. In other words, you couldn't do a sewage plant, wastewater plant, a rendering facility, the types of things that would bother a community beyond the fence line of that particular factory. That's where we wanted to be.
We've evolved over millions of years, plants, animals, and humans, to thrive in an environment saturated with natural hydroxyls. They kill the bacteria, viruses, mold and mildew, pollen, and other organic materials that accumulate even under natural conditions in our environment, that were they not checked and destroyed, the natural environment we live in would be out of balance and would become toxic. That balance doesn't exist in our increasingly insulated and confined indoor spaces. And what HGI has been able to do is bring that capability indoors and afford you that option to recreate that natural, fresh air quality, that balance indoors. And without that, the outgassing from your carpets, from your fabric, every time you bring a garment from the dry cleaners, every time your house is cleaned with a whole array of all those sprays and chemicals, they accumulate. They are not good for you. To breathe in hypochlorite from the bleach, if you use that as a cleaning solution, is actually very dangerous to your health. Hydroxyls indoors would decompose those and restore that natural balance and safety of your air. It also will get rid of the accumulated mold, mildew bacteria that are a consequence of recycling your own air.
Actually came from a couple of employees that came to HGI, told me about what was going on there, explaining a little bit about the technology. In December of 2008, excuse me, I was asked to actually take a look at automating some of the hydroxyl generators at that point in time. I came in kind of to the facilities to really go through what they had at the time. I'm going to say I was a little leery, but I did a little, kind of background on checking out what a hydroxyl was. I heard some testimonials from the people that I know, but it really wasn't until I went down to, to a rendering plant and saw this technology working. And truly, if you've ever been to a rendering plant and how nasty that environment is, looking at this just rotting food in these pits and things like that, and looking at it, and it's kind of a mind game that you're not smelling anything, and you're not seeing the flies, you're not seeing the maggots, you're not seeing what you would think, and you're just looking at this thing straight. I'd have to say, once anybody goes down to an environment like this, especially if they've been to an environment where this technology wasn't working, would make you a believer right there and then.
In the marketplace, there's a variety of sensors. Most of them are electrochemical sensors that are used to measure a variety of gases, both inert and corrosive. These devices were never designed to measure necessarily potent oxidizers with electrochemical potentials over 1 electron volt selectively. So when they respond to oxidizers, they respond to them as a group. So they'll routinely register positive for not only hydroxyls and ozone together, but hydrogen peroxide and hypochlorites, bleach, and lemon juice, and other common oxidizers. It's not to criticize them as devices, it's just that their use is being inappropriately used in trying to selectively measure either ozone or hydroxyls. HGI commissioned an independent survey by Sanexen Environmental and Toxicology Services, a company that is extremely experienced in the use of hydroxyls in the sanitization process, and they surveyed vendors of these devices and laboratories that use other analytical methods. And in their report to the company, they said there are no commercially available labs or methods that can differentiate between a hydroxyl and ozone. And so HGI is taking it upon itself to develop new analytical methods to do just that.
The automation includes really a closed loop environment. It actually is sampling the environment and making adjustments to accommodate the VOCs or the particulates that are in the environment. It's adaptively going into that. It's allowing you also to integrate it into a full manufacturing line or an environment where you need to be able to predict what's occurring. In other words, especially as we got moved from more of the odor into the bacteria kills in environments, the lines are now starting to depend on us to do their sanitation as opposed to utilizing chemicals. And once you do that, the reliability needs to be increased, being able to self-diagnose, self-correct, and to ensure that you're producing the proper amount of hydroxyls based on the production levels. So in other words, we'd be tying into a particular automation system, into the particular customer's automation system, and being able to predict based on what's coming down the line that we should be ramping up or ramping down our hydroxyl production in order to ensure that we're getting the right coverage.